hit me up.
2,000 years later.
Future! What are you simpletons doing?
SB129.
Spongebob Squarepants is one of my favorite shows of all time. Chances are, if you were born in the 90s, you have some level of appreciation for the show, or at least the first 3 seasons of it. It's crazy to look back on older episodes and see just how much of an influence they've had on pop culture, and just how mature the writing really is. The writers of the show are very good at tackling more mature subject matter, like agoraphobia, midlife crisis, loneliness, loss, and existentialism, and making it digestible for kids without dumbing things down. It's also crazier to see the influence the show has had on current media as well, with some of the older episodes still being quoted by most people on the internet, and various images from the show being used for memes. I think I speak for everyone when I say that SpongeBob had a huge effect on my sense of humor as a child, and made me more welcoming and understanding of more surrealist forms of comedy. So today, I thought I'd take a look at one of the most memorable and most quotable episodes from the series' first season. I'm Sir Gregolas, and today, I'll be taking a look at SB129. Because you're not paying me for nothing, right?
SB129.
Here we go, y'all. Classic SpongeBob here. Gave me my first existential crisis. The episode begins as we see the sunrise on an early Sunday morning. Squidward opens his window, ready to blow on his phallic instrument, but is interrupted by SpongeBob's alarm clock. Damn, Squidward, what that f***ing mouth do? I think Squidward's been practicing the clarinet in other ways, if you know what I mean. He then asks Squidward if he wants to go jellyfishing, mistaking his cries of agony for a yes. We then hear knocking at Squidward's front door. He answers to find SpongeBob and Patrick there, ready to go jellyfishing. Oh god, these f***ing assholes. Squidward refuses and is proceeded to be trolled by the 2 gay lovers. This is straight up f***ing harassment, bro. Like, they just fucking locked my man out of his own house. After momentarily being locked out of his own house, Squidward proceeds to ask SpongeBob why he's not at work, to which he replies,
I'd love to be at work today, but it's Sunday. The Krusty Krab is closed.
Hold on a second. I'll be right out.
Squidward uses this as an opportunity to escape his oppressors and sneaks to the Krusty Krab. It's like absolutely ridiculous that this man has to sneak out of his own house for some fucking peace and quiet on a goddamn Sunday. He gets there and it is closed, but for some reason the door is just open for anyone to come in. Guess Bikini Bottom is like the Canada of underwater. Anyway, Squidward is finally going to get that practice in, but SpongeBob and Patrick roll up to the Krusty Krab looking for him, prompting Squidward to hide in the freezer. SpongeBob and Patrick leave thinking Squidward is already at Jellyfish Fields. Squidward attempts to exit the freezer, but that doesn't really work out. What? No one went in the freezer for 2,000 years? Nah, that's bullshit, bro. They just saw that nigga was in there and they just fucking left his ass in there. So then, a SpongeBob with jet boosters hovers by, sees Squidward, and decides to free him from his icy prison after 200 centuries of captivity. The futuristic SpongeBob then identifies himself as Spongetron and tells Squidward that he is in the future where everything is chrome and there are 486 versions of SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, it looks like a Lil Uzi Vert album cover in here.
All of whom neglected to free Squidward from the kitchen freezer. This man is a fucking danger to everyone around him. Oh yeah, then we get this iconic scene. Also, there's a 2-headed Patrick for some reason. So, understandably horrified, Squidward begs for a way to get back to the past. He's directed to a time machine, but only finds it after entering a room-sized can opener. I almost wish this episode was double the length so that I could get more future Bikini Bottom lore, because so far this has been a trip. Anyway, Squidward decides to go back in time before SpongeBob was even born and goes to the ever so specific past. So, the time machine arrives in the primordial sea. As Squidward searches for a quiet place to practice his clarinet, a shadowy figure pursues him, which is then revealed to be a primitive sponge, most likely an ancestor of SpongeBob. Squidward tries to get away, but is stopped by a primitive Patrick. The two investigate Squidward's existence, but are distracted by a jellyfish, which they are scared shitless of. It's like no matter what he does, He's like a magnet to the bullshit, bro. Like, he can't get away from these fucking idiots' two gene pools. Squidward uses this as a chance to make a quick getaway and finally finds a spot to practice. He tries to play, but is interrupted by the screams of pain of the primitives, who are zapping themselves with jellyfish. Whether or not this is their first encounter with electricity is unknown, but it is highly likely. Squidward then proceeds to MacGyver up the primitive sea creatures' two jellyfishing nets. He then proceeds to explain the concept of jellyfishing to them, and it's well received. The implications this will have on SpongeBob lore is game-changing. So finally, Squidward begins to play his clarinet. This drives the primitives insane. They hate this. It doesn't slap, and they attack Squidward, who barely makes it back to the time machine. Like, this shit right here, like, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be bad. Like, you know, they're pissed off and shit. They don't fucking like it. And, you know, it's pretty widely accepted that Squidward is ass at clarinet, but that shit's hot, bro. Like, Tristan, if you're watching this, we gotta sample that shit. Like, that shit would go fucking dummy, bro. He frantically jams the lever up and down and snaps it off. And he goes all Doctor Who and shit before arriving in Purgatory. Damn, that part hits when you're fucking smacked. Squidward basks in his alone time, but the voices in his head prove to be too much for him to bear. This is pretty much a microcosm of my entire COVID experience. He tries to escape the empty void, but his attempts are futile. He stomps on the ground and he miraculously crashes back into the time machine. Squidward bangs on the controls, begging the time machine to take him back home, saying that he misses his old life, and even SpongeBob. All of a sudden, the time machine returns Squidward home with SpongeBob and Patrick just waiting for him. They ask him if
You wanna go jellyfishing?
But Squidward refuses and asks who invented such a stupid game in the first place. They both tell him that he invented it. Squidward, realizing that he inadvertently created a temporal paradox in his timeline, states that he's going back to rectify his mistake. So, what does it all mean? Honestly, hard to say. The narrative here is quite absurd and random, but I do applaud the writers of this episode for throwing so many crazy ideas into one episode. You could tell that they were having a blast. Squidward has always been the straight man for the majority of SpongeBob episodes, and he's used to great effect here. Coming back to this episode as an adult, his simple goal of just getting some alone time is one that I find to be more relatable, and his arc in this episode is surprisingly effective now that I've had my own fair share of existential crises. As the episode progresses, we see Squidward come to terms with the fact that he can't always control the environment that he's in, and that although he may not be entirely content with his life as is, it's a hell of a lot more satisfactory than he gives it credit for. I like that the message of the episode is quite literally to live in the present, and that it teaches kids not to take the things that they have for granted. Although I will say, as an adult, the idea of Squidward escaping Purgatory and getting back home just by wishing it into existence is something that didn't really feel like a satisfying conclusion to me. We kind of get to the 10-minute mark, and the most intense part of the episode kind of just fizzles out into the conclusion, which is interesting to me because I distinctly remember feeling relieved that Squidward was able to get out of that tight corner he was in when I was a kid. Mainly because I was scared for him and was caught off guard by the direction that the episode went in. Still, great content. I'm glad that I was exposed to more experimental stuff like this when I was a kid, and that as an adult, I'm able to appreciate it regardless of my shift in perspective while viewing it. Being able to sympathize more with Squidward as opposed to just laughing at his misery like I did when I was younger. What do you think, Obi? Meow. Meow. Meow, 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 meow. Damn, meow.